This is a story of redemption. And you may be wondering, why is this guy sitting on his screened-in porch? I thought I was going to learn how to make an outdoor TV stand. Well, there it is, right over there. You see, we wanted a way to enjoy our favorite shows outside without having to hang a big TV up on the wall somewhere. That's because we got these great views. We didn't want to lose them to a TV. And a few videos ago, when I made this potting bench, it was the first time I had ever poured one of these concrete tops. And unfortunately, cracked the top taking it out of the mold. Now I was able to salvage a project and it turned out great. But honestly, I wanted to try another project where I could totally redeem myself. So when my lovely wife let me know that she wanted to spend hundreds of dollars to buy an outdoor TV stand, I quickly went into action. So today we're building this outdoor TV stand for about $120, and I get to see if I can redeem myself by making a concrete top that hopefully won't crack this time. We'll also make this really cool frame and shelf out of red cedar, and I'll show you how to make some half-lap joints to make sure that this thing is rock solid. So let's go get to work and see how this thing turns out.
The first thing we need to do is build a mold that we can pour our concrete top into. Clearly, you can see I've used this melamine for about 6 or 7 various projects, including epoxy pours, along with the last concrete top I poured. And getting this many uses out of one sheet of melamine is exactly why I recommend using melamine and mold release over other options when pouring stuff into molds. Just pre-drill some holes in the sides and screw the sides to the base. It couldn't be easier. Oh, and this top will be 1.5 inches thick. Next, we can seal the seams with some silicone caulk. And here are 3 tips and tricks to keep in mind if you ever need to caulk something. Coming in at number 1, just the tip. You don't need to cut a big hole in the end of your tube. Trust me, plenty of caulk will come out. Plus, you can always cut more off later if you need. Tip number 2, cut the tip at an angle. You can run the pointed part of the tip right in the seam to keep it straight. And this also pushes the caulk into the seam where you want it, all while leaving a nice finish without any hassle. And last but not least, always lube your caulk and your trusty finger with some foaming window cleaner. Then glide your trusty finger along the seam, leaving you with a nice finished look without all the mess. And with all that caulk out of the way, we can set the mold aside overnight to let it cure. And if you're enjoying this video, are you opposed to subscribing down below to let me know? If you didn't know, it actually helps ensure that I can continue to make content for you in the future, and I appreciate each and every one of you who has supported me along the way. Next, we need to process the wood that will become the frame. This red cedar is really rough, so we start by running it through a planer to get it smooth on both sides. Cedar is naturally rot resistant and bug resistant, making it perfect for an outdoor project like this TV stand. Then we cut all the pieces down to length at the miter saw. In an ideal world where money isn't an issue, I would have jointed these boards before cutting them down to length. It helps make the miter cuts more accurate. But since I only have a tabletop jointer, I get better results on the jointer if I cut things into smaller pieces first. We only need to joint one edge of each board because we can use the table saw to square the last edge of each piece. Just make sure to run the jointed edge of each board along the table saw fence when doing this. You'll want to end up with 4 frame pieces for the bottom shelf, 2 concrete top support pieces, 4 legs, and 2 leg support things. Oh, and the star of the show are these 2 scrap pieces that we can use to set up our table saw before we cut any of the half-lap joints on our final pieces.
It took me about an hour to mill all of this wood down, but I gotta tell you, it's worth it. No matter what your skill level is, milling down your wood to make sure that it's nice and square and consistent in width and thickness and length will ensure that the outcome of your project will be 100 times better. If I were to just take this off the shelf from the big box store and start slapping things together, nothing would be straight, everything would be crooked, and my joints wouldn't align.
To cut the half-lap joints, we need to start by adjusting the height of the table saw blade. The blade height needs to be exactly 1/2 the thickness of our material, so the frame pieces will overlap perfectly. To do this, we set the blade just shy of the final height we want and run a few test cuts through the end of each of the scraps. You can see here they don't quite fit yet, and this was done on purpose. We want to slowly dial in this cut. Keep raising the blade just a hair while keeping in mind that any adjustment you make will have a double effect in the final fit because you are making cuts on each board. 1 cut on each side of 2 boards equals math. Just trust me here. it's double.
And this is the fit that we're going for. If you barely move them, they stay together, but if you yank them kind of hard, they come apart. And also, when you go to put them together, there's just a little bit of friction there to hold them together. So the next thing we need to do is get these to fit together this way.
With the blade height set, we can get the depth of the cut dialed in. This is equal to the width of our material. Again, set your fence just shy of where you know you want the final cut to be. Then move the table saw fence over a little time using micro adjustments until it's perfect. Also, before you cut anything on the final pieces, it is always a good idea to mark out where you want the cuts to be so you don't make any mistakes. And check to make sure your marks are in the correct spot. Just remember this small piece of advice a little later. And now there is nothing for me to do except for feel a deep sense of regret. You see, I have bragged over and over again in past videos how cheap I am, and even laughed at the fact that I don't own a dado stack. Well, over the next hour, I can tell you that, in fact, karma has reared her ugly head and is paying me back as I notch out all these pieces 1/8 of a freaking inch at a time. And this is only the beginning. Let me know in the comments down below which dado stack you would recommend, because I won't be bragging about not having one ever again, and I want to make sure whatever I get is worth the money. So thanks for helping me out. With all the half laps done on the 4-leg and 2-leg support pieces, we still need to run a dado in the bottom edge of each leg so we can slide the frame of the bottom shelf into it, thus providing superior support. This is where it's important to correctly mark out things before cutting them. I mark on each leg where I think I want the dado to go, keeping in mind that the frame will sit a little proud of the leg, giving it a contemporary look. And did you see what I did? I literally just made the mistake I was trying to warn you about. What I actually mean is, this is a YouTube learning opportunity showing you what it looks like if you mark your pieces in the wrong spot. The last slot we need to cut is on the top of each leg brace. This will accept the 2 pieces that will support the concrete top. Just adjust the saw again, and these slots can be hogged out as slowly and painfully as every other joint on this project. Oh, and I thought about doing a half lap here, but the support pieces are pretty long, and I didn't have a way to safely make these cuts with a high degree of accuracy. This quick mock-up gives you an idea of what this thing will look like once it's assembled, but I want to add a decorative 45-degree angle cut to the bottom ends of each top support piece. This time I correctly marked these out and cut them on my miter saw. See? Lesson learned, buddy. Yeah, good job. And with all that out of the way, we can pour the concrete top. The mold has been curing overnight, so the first thing we need to do is get it level and spray it down with a good coat of WD-40 so the mortar we are using won't stick to our mold. Just give it a good spray, let it sit for a minute, and lightly buff off any excess with a shop rag. For this 48 by 20 1.5 inch top, we are using 2 bags of Rapid Set mortar mix and 2 bags of flow control. This is a great method to use for smaller pours because it is easier to get a smooth top, even if you don't have experience. Just start by adding 1 bag of mortar mix into a 5-gallon bucket that contains 2 liters of cold water. Then thoroughly mix it with a giant mixer attachment on a drill. This stuff will be like peanut butter after it's mixed, which is a little too thick for us to work with and almost killed my drill. But just watch as this stuff transforms after adding 1 packet of flow control. Now this is something we can work with. The second batch of mortar came out better than the first, and my drill started smoking, so this is as good as I'm going to get it. After pouring the mortar into the mold, give it a good smush until it's relatively flat, then tap the sides and bottom with a mallet or anything else that vibrates. This gets the air bubbles out. Then just screed it smooth with a straight flat board. Now the top you're seeing here will actually become the bottom in the finished piece, so if it isn't perfect, that's okay. And now we just wait for at least an hour for it to harden and lightly mist it with some water every 15 minutes or so to help prevent cracking. While that cures, we can assemble the TV stand frame. For this, I'm using some Titebond 3, since this is an outdoor piece and Titebond 3 is waterproof, along with some 1¼ inch deck screws in each half lap joint just for some extra security. Just be sure to pre-drill for each screw to help keep the wood from splitting. This pre-drill bit thing is a little bit pricey, but well worth the money. There's a link for this below along with everything else I used in this project, so it's easy for you to find. And using those links helps me out a little bit too, so thank you for taking a look. Now these screws will be near the top inside corner of the frame, so they won't be very visible. You could plug these if you wanted, so they would be almost invisible. And before continuing with any more assembly, we're going to put a 1/8 inch roundover on the edge of each leg assembly and the top support pieces, then use a chisel to clean up the inside corners where the router can't reach. And finally, give everything a light sanding with some 120 grit. I didn't feel the need to sand any more than that for a rustic outdoor piece. With that done, we can install the supports that will hold our concrete top and join our leg assemblies together. These get attached with some 3.5 inch screws and more Type Bond 3. To ensure these screws get enough grip, we drill down about 1 inch with a 7/16 inch drill bit to countersink the screws. I also use a scrap piece of wood as a spacer to keep everything aligned on the edge, also checking for square along the way. Now the frame for the bottom shelf is just assembled with butt joints, a little glue, and some screws. And you can see here how versatile this countersink bit is and how it allows for all sorts of adjustments. It does a great job of re-drilling, countersinking, and keeping your countersink square all at the same time. And the round brass piece won't beat up your wood. Now this frame was designed so that when it slid into place, the screws we just put in each butt joint will be hidden. This was also designed so we can attach it to the inside of the legs just below the location of the shelf slats, so you will never see these screws either. I opted not to glue here to allow for seasonal movement, but each frame rail does get 2 screws to attach it to each leg. Now hopefully, we are about to watch redemption happen in real time as I take this concrete top out of the mold. Will this top crack like the last one? Let's find out.
And of course it would be raining now that it's time to take this out of the mold. If you watched the video where I built a potting bench for my wife, you'll know that the last time I took one of these out of the mold, it broke in half. Yeah, that happened. I hope that it comes out of the mold, and hope that we don't crack this one. Let's see what happens. And it looks pretty good. It's actually not bad at all, and so far it hasn't cracked.
After unmolding, we can use some 60 grit sandpaper to knock down any rough spots and sharp edges. We still need to add the slats to the shelf before we can put everything else together. To start, we cut some 1x4 cedar boards to length on the miter saw, and because details matter, these also get a 1/8 inch roundover on each side along with a light sanding. But we still need something to attach the slats to. So here, we are adding some cedar strips along the long rail of the frame, using some glue and a few screws. We are also using one of our shelf slats as a spacer to determine where the supports should go to ensure the slats will end up flush on top when they are installed. Then we flip this frame up on edge and attach each slat with some glue and only 1 screw from the bottom. Now I know this is a little unconventional, but doing it this way will hide the screws so you will never see them. This shelf won't need to hold a lot of weight either. Now I used some scraps of cardboard as a spacer when installing these slats, and I wouldn't recommend doing this. The more I used the cardboard, the more it compressed, and it left me with a few uneven gaps in the final product. I decided the best way to get the frame aligned to this 105-pound mortar top was to flip the top over on some sawhorses, then place the frame on top of it so everything is upside down. This makes it easy to measure everything and get it lined up perfectly. Then I mark out where everything needs to go with a Sharpie. Hey, watch it there, buddy. You know this is being filmed, right? Come on, get back to work. Where was I? Oh yeah. We apply some of this rapid set adhesive to the top of the support pieces of the frame. Set the frame back on top of the concrete slab and give it a few shakes to get everything bonded together. This stuff is crazy strong. Even after curing for just 1 hour, this top is never coming off. And this is what we made, a 120-pound outdoor TV stand that could probably serve as a tornado shelter for a small animal.
Overall, this TV stand turned out great. I couldn't be happier. It's super sturdy, has a great look, and is sure to stand up to all the weather. And remember, you can build it yourself. Oh, and before you go, if you like this video, then watch the video on the screen right here where I make that potting bench with the concrete top and see what I did wrong so you don't make the same mistakes I did. Alright, thanks for watching.